Ali, where have you travelled from today?
I've travelled from Manchester.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very busy train.
Yeah.
And I had to read my notes on my phone because the laptop, I literally couldn't open my laptop.
Yeah. What? Because it was so busy.
It was that.
Were you on the Trans-Pennine Express?
I was, unfortunately. Yeah.
I've never heard that being busy before. Apparently, it's like the ultimate paradise,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Why don't we have kind of HS3 across?
Oh goodness!
Can you imagine?
Gone there.
Do you know how we all are supposed to have privacy screen protectors? But if someone's standing right above you in the aisle, it doesn't work, does it?
And I suppose for your world of cybersecurity, that's even more important. In fact, why don't we just kick off right now with today's Blueprint podcast, Tech Insights for Today's Decision Makers. So my name's Tim Hancock. I'm going to introduce my fellow co-host.
Hello, Dan Yamini, CTF Services, and we have got Ali with us today. So all the way from Manchester on the beautiful Trans-Pennine Express. Ali, do you want to just introduce yourself to the listeners?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm Ali Farooqui. I'm the head of the cybersecurity service for BJSS. I've been in this role for about a year, and I've been quite hands-on, thankfully. I've been able to tinker around and work with a really, really bright, passionate team over the past year. I'd love
Awesome.
to talk about
So we can dig into that, which is going to be great. What we do with all our other guests is get to know them a little bit first. So, Ali, do you want to just tell us something interesting about yourself, a hobby you've got, something that might resonate with listeners?
Yeah, after all of that work, I think the only thing I actually do is build Game Boys and retro consoles. I've been trying to figure out how to add an OLED panel, so a really nice panel, to a Game Boy that I bought off of eBay. And it's been a nightmare because the supply chains have been all over the place. It's a lot of like soldering stuff in.
Yeah. This is interesting. Not that
I know, it's interesting for you.
I tell you what, we'll come back to this. So we'll move on because this sounds like a fascinating topic. Okay.
So I've worked with Ali for a number of years, and my background is in, actually, believe it or not, cybersecurity many, many years ago.
Not building Game Boys.
No, not building Game Boys. But if anybody can bring cybersecurity to life with a passion and energy, it's Ali. So I just wanted to ask you about the kind of things you're seeing today in the market, Ali. What are the challenges you're seeing with the clients that you engage with?
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to work with some of the largest organizations, some of the most competent organizations when it comes to cybersecurity. And what's really interesting is how almost all of the cloud security and cybersecurity leadership have been particularly unhappy with the state of affairs.
Yeah.
I think it's a byproduct of just being in a field that's extremely fast paced.
Yeah.
No one's ever really happy, and the risk portfolio, the risk profile is so large. But what we've seen is that the cloud security leadership folk, the people that are stakeholders, whether that's CISOs, whether that's people that are responsible for data or tooling or engineering, they seem to approach the solution to be, they want the solution to be tooling. And the results for all of the tools in the market at the moment are seen as particularly noisy. And the vendors, when you go and sit with them, and I'm not pointing any fingers.
No, well, we love all vendors equally, don't we?
Move on. Yes, they're all great. Go on. Yeah.
They seem to have a magic bullet. Every single person you sit with, and that confidence isn't, it's warranted in some cases. There's a lot of absolutely fantastic work the CrowdStrikes and the Tenables and the Whizzes of the world are doing, but the leadership, they're still not happy, and it is because it comes down to how complex cloud security is.
Yeah.
The nature of how ephemeral some of the resources are and the amount of noise they generate. It used to be, Tim, you must remember, there used to be network teams, security teams with like 50 people at the very least.
Totally, yeah.
And now there's like 5 people, and they're expected to respond to millions of alerts.
Yeah.
How are they going to do that without impacting developer experience, without impacting the customer, without impacting your user journeys? That's the current challenge, isn't it?
And I guess those leaders who are looking for that silver bullet from a vendor, my guess is they must get quite frustrated because they would invest in a brand new tool, they'd be sold the dream, and it just doesn't fill the whole of their requirements. How do you get around that in your day-to-day life and work?
I think that the really interesting bit is being within the team that we're in right now, we get to see the procurement phase, which is where some of these stakeholders who understand their organization's business problems and the value to the business when it comes to security, when they sit in these meetings with the vendors, whether that's the hyperscalers themselves, whether that's AWS, Azure, GCP, or whether that's the market-leading cloud security experts, the CrowdStrikes, the Wizzes, the Prismas of the world. And we see the kind of terminology and the marketing that's used. And then when you actually see it enforced, you get to realize that, yes, the tools are all capable of all of these magical, amazing things, but you need governance, you need engineering skill sets, you need a very specific type of security hat on to be able to actually get the best out of these tools. And that's the challenge, right? The challenge is bringing expert consultants, expert practitioners, and having them think in a way where they can get the best out of these tools and they can enforce resiliency, enforce high availability, make sure that the guardrails are all there without impacting the business. Not slowing down the business. And that's the day-to-day. That's the challenge.
So I've got a question for you on that then. So it's 2025. The hyperscalers and the industry spending billions, tens of billions of dollars on research every year, building out these products. Is this a case of hubris and the over belief in what these services provide? Because it sounds like there's a huge gap between what they deliver technically and what is actually out there, and the gap. Otherwise, why isn't security just fixed? Why hasn't it been addressed?
If only there was some research that was available that maybe somebody's done.
I'm going to, before I go into that research bit, I'm going to just give a couple of sentences around the timeline and the history and why investment in these areas is not actually moot. There's obviously the business case for it. People keep asking for better cloud security tools and security tools in general, whether that's endpoint, whether that's cloud security, posture management. There's so many interesting terms like cloud native application protection platforms.
I just love them. Just another acronym, and we just need another acronym, don't we? Especially in the cybersecurity world.
Like 25 of them. Sometimes I forget what I'm talking about. Since 2010, when the first generation of cloud security posture management tools came about, there was a whole set of these pioneers that were thinking about getting all of the inventory data from your various on-premise and cloud and other bits and bobs. You know, if you've got a desktop in an office, how do you make sure you inventorize it? Because you can't protect what you don't know about. And it's kind of evolved from that to specialist tools that consume APIs that are provided by the hyperscalers. So the hyperscalers investing hundreds of millions and billions of dollars and pounds in these particular endpoints and these APIs has actually been absolutely amazing for the industry, because if they hadn't, cloud security wouldn't be a thing anymore. I think it wouldn't have scaled. I think it would have fallen apart, and the largest organizations would genuinely be thinking about moving back into a basement and moving all of their servers back into a co-located rack space. At this point in time, when we talk about cloud security tools, the likes of Azure and the amount of investment they've put in, that's Microsoft and Azure, the amount of energy, time, and the sort of work and leadership that AWS are putting into their security tools, that's all leading the way for cloud security vendors to take those APIs and do something even better. So that investment isn't going away. The challenge isn't that the tools aren't getting better. The problem is that the workspace, the attack surface, the ways that people can be attacked, that's getting much more complex. I mean, we've all kind of seen these platforms evolve. It's gone from being, 200, 500 resources in a busy account to now millions. Yeah. And so that one person who could have, pair their engineering expertise with what they see on the screen, they can't do that anymore. I can't sit in front of a monitor in a big sort of security operations center and look at a stream. It's like being in the Matrix and you just see those digits fall down, and it's like, well, I can't actually see what's happening anymore. I need the tool to tell me what's happening. Give me some context. Give me some hydrated data. That's the challenge.
And do you think that attack surface will increase with the more AI related infrastructure that's been built into by organizations today?
We're seeing this right now. I don't want to go into the technical details, but there is a privilege escalation pathway where we've seen one of our customers get attacked with an AI enabled tool where I'm gonna say it. there is a permission model called the IAM pass role. And there are a number of ways of getting into the account and escalating your privileges. And once you've gotten your hooks into the account, you can do all kinds of crazy things like create lambdas and destroy things and shift things and maybe even run some crypto bits and bobs. And so we've seen that happen. And it's harder and harder to pick that up unless you have a very, very experienced and skilled team and a set of strategists that actually understand how it all aligns with your business values and your business outcomes.
So we I mentioned before, I just snuck in that kind of, if only there was some research that was available. And obviously that's a leading question because Ali is actually doing a lot of research right now. So just give us a couple of minutes on the kind of thing that you're doing right now from a CSPM research perspective.
Yeah, I mean, we've been working with a UK body that informs other parts of the UK government infrastructure. And we've been trying to inform them of how cloud security tools have evolved, what they should be looking for when it comes to effective procurement, and how to get the best out of those tools. And that means not just looking at what tools provide the most features, but are the features that they're providing actually effective at stopping attacks? But that isn't just about deploying the services and then hoping for the best. A lot of it comes down to, well, how hard is it to actually manage? If I'm getting 500 million alerts every day, how hard is it to actually get the context out and let me see the whole pathway, the whole attack pattern? How hard is it for my operations team to do the least amount of work and gain the most out of the tool? And so a lot of the research is focused on value from an engineering perspective, and also the efficacy of the tools themselves, and how hard is it to deliver that user experience and that business experience.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that because that's a long way from a checklist of features that on the surface may seem fine, but like I say, if you can't manage it, if you can't run it, if you can't see it, if it doesn't scale, it's next to useless, isn't it?
Exactly that. And that's one of my gripes with the industry at the moment, and it feels like I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here.
Do it. Do it.
There is a whole industry around cloud security tools and hyperscalers, and they are some of the smartest people in the industry looking at the value of the tools and the value of using these services. And some of the analyst research is excellent, don't get me wrong. It informs us, it informs the wider industry, it informs product roadmaps. But then there are a lot of checklist and checkbox exercises. I mean, we've seen a number of research firms just provide a very large sort of spreadsheet, and it says if the cloud security vendor says they do endpoint protection, great, everyone's happy. They do cloud, endpoint protection. What we want to know is how effective that endpoint protection is. We've created a MITRE framework, an attack framework that will generate commonly seen attacks in the cloud for compute, containers, serverless components, microservices. And we are essentially doing that bake-off, where we're comparing all of these popular and the sort of tools that are used by large organizations, enterprises. There's some comparisons with open source tools as well, because we want to get a feel of what's available for free and what's there's a little bit of a caveat there. There's always engineering effort required. So how much engineering effort is required to get it working as well? And then we're going to attack those tools. So what do the happy parts look like, and what do the very, very sad parts look like, and how hard is it to get the data out and then present it in a form that's easy to read, some executive summaries. Maybe we can
I mean, I've read some of the initial drafts, and it's really, really interesting.
It is, and my reading was it is a long way from a checklist. It's a long way from some high-level advice. It's practitioner-led. It's real. It's based on facts. The thing that I just find, and I'm actually going to ask you, Ali, about is this arms race, because cyber literally is an arms race, and it's between the good guys and the bad guys. How do you keep up? How do you maintain momentum? Because you stop and something else is going to happen.
That is something that keeps me up at night sometimes. I think the research that we're doing, if it was done in a vacuum, it wouldn't be very useful. But what's really exciting for me is that everything that we're doing, we are then talking to the product and research teams from the vendor side, and actually going and taking away our findings and asking, are we finding the right things? Are these gaps that we're finding, are they actually accurate? And in a lot of cases they are, and in some cases they've come back and said, have you tried using it in this scenario, because we've got 20% coverage here and maybe we've got no coverage there. And that conversation is how you actually keep on top. It's the feedback loop between the business, the engineering teams and the research teams and the cloud security vendors, because security as a service isn't going away. I think for a lot of large organizations, it's the only way forward. I think it's the value proposition of getting the right type of security vendor in, and then having the right type of security operations and security engineering teams to pair with the business to get the best value out. That's how we're going to keep on top of this challenge. There's no other way.
So I'm thinking of kind of summarising. If I was, let's say, a CISO with a large organisation, what kind of 2 or 3 things would you say to me right now in terms of cyber security posture management, other than read my research, obviously, because you're going to plug that, I'm sure. So read Ali's research, number one. What else would you say?
I think a lot of the C-suite and the CISOs, the CSOs, the CDOs that we talk to, they are experienced. They are smart, passionate people who understand their organization's problems. But they have very clear roadmaps and they need results immediately.
Yeah.
The challenge is creating an effective security program, and the automation, response, resource discovery, the core tooling that we're talking about, it's a very small part of it. You need to understand your business appetite and your risk. You need to articulate the threat model, and you need to understand the threat landscape for your business. If you're a retail sector, if you're in the retail sector, it's going to be different to if you're a financial sector organization. You have to understand your security baseline. You have to understand, there's a couple of really interesting concepts that I've been talking to some of the security leadership. There's a concept of, standard key performance indicators for your security operations teams. But then there's also key risk indicators. What are your risks and are they changing? What are the things that are generally just going to stay the same, and what are the things that actually morph and change as you take different business decisions? And it needs to be a living document, there need to be data point for you to inform that. And then there's another thing called the security poverty line. And it's an interesting concept because different parts of your organizations and different teams have different maturity. And if, as part of your security program, you can understand what that security poverty line is for different parts of your organization and your different product teams, you're probably doing better than most.
Yeah.
And sometimes security is all about, it's almost like you're running away from a bear. You just don't want to be the slowest. Yeah. Right?
That's brilliant, though. Thank you, Ali. So I know you're absolutely bursting to talk about.
So we need to go back to your passion. Go on, fill us in. Tell us a bit more.
When I was growing up, my dad got me a Game Boy Advance. And I played that game for hours because it was quite easy to hide from my grandma. She's one of those that wanted me to study 8 hours a day and then play the game 15 minutes. And it's really easy to kind of shift it about. So I've grown up playing Game Boy Advances and Golden Sun and Pokemon.
So because you can hide in the cupboard and
play, and put a little backlight on it. But my pet peeve with my Game Boy was that it didn't have a backlight, which meant that you can't go under the blanket and play the games. You have to have like this massive torch, and then my grandma would find out and I'm in trouble. This Game Boy that I'm building, it has a backlight. It's got basically a modern mobile phone screen in it, and it's got upgraded speakers. It's got a USB-C port. I've soldered it all on.
You've pimped the whole thing. You've kind of taken it.
It's cost me so much money because I bought a Game Boy and I broke it almost within the first hour of me trying to cut it apart. And I've got a Dremel and I've got a water sort of like basin that's specifically for cutting plastic. I think I'm in too deep. That's the honest answer.
I don't know that you can be in too deep because you sounds like you're happy. Big question: can it still play Tetris?
It does.
Right,
it's
good.
working. I'll bring it over next time. It looks really
right.
good.
We'll have to add some links.
Hello. So, any questions around cybersecurity posture management, Ali's awesome research, or
custom Game Boy development?
I'd love to talk about Game Boys. Let's do a podcast on Game Boys.
Shall we? I think we should. So, Ali Farooqui, thank you very much. That was a great 20 minutes chat. Thank you.